Thank you. I think we're ready to go. I will call the meeting of the Committee on Judiciary and Law to order. It's January 24th. Let the record show that at least right now, there are 3 members of the committee present. That's Supervisor Bauer, Supervisor Rogers, and Supervisor Tripp, along with County Board Chair Dave Bartlett, and a number of staff. We are expecting that Jim Zons and Carl Vandermillen will join us. When they do, Katie, you can take note of that. Let's see. Approval of the minutes from, holy smokes, when did we last meet? October. If anybody remembers that far back and you'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes, I would accept that motion. Supervisor Rogers moves, Bauer seconds. We have a motion and a second. There were a couple of minor spelling corrections that were made on there, but nothing that changes the substance of the minutes. Anybody else? Any discussion about approval of the minutes from October? Seeing none. Oh, did I hear something? No, must be my imagination. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, folks. Public comments. I'm assuming we don't have any members of the public. Matt, anybody around that we need to know about?
There were no public comments.
It's too bad. One of these days we'll get one. Staff reports. We'll start with emergency management, 911. Melissa is here and she provided a written report. Melissa, is there anything you'd like to add to your report or emphasize? I know that, well, I'll let you go ahead and talk to the committee about the subject you notified me about today.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jim. I did provide in my written report about our WISCOM radio system that the board has been working so closely with me on since probably about 2013. And the state of Wisconsin owns most of the system that we are daily users on for our law enforcement channels. And they are going to reassess that program and possibly leave it the way it is, possibly make some changes to it. They're in the middle of an RFP process right now. And I just wanted to make the board aware that we did have a couple different funding projects funded that we have not been able to complete yet. And right now, I think it's on kind of in our best interest to kind of hold off on completing these projects until we know where the state is heading with the WISCOM radio system. And if Dunn County will stay on the system as a daily user. So I just wanted to make you aware of it. A couple of I think the fundings did come through bonding and borrowing, different things like that. So I just want to make you aware of it. I have been working with Keith and we've been talking it over and trying to make sure that we are following all the rules and that we're making the appropriate decisions. And, if we need to reallocate that money for a different project, that we do follow through on that. So that's really all I wanted to kind of emphasize was that it's, it's a state system that we have had the privilege of using and being a daily user of. And we did have, some Dunn County dollars put into that system. Here in Dunn County, we have the 3 towers that connect into that system. It's our equipment. One of the towers is actually owned by Dunn County. So Dunn County definitely has some stake in this project. But I just wanted you to be aware that there were a couple enhancements to our radio system that we're just going to hold off on until we know exactly where the state is heading with their entire statewide system.
Melissa, was the funding for that part of our capital improvement plan?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give us just a thumbnail sketch? What kind of money are we talking about and what's kind of the overall timeline? And I know that that's a little bit difficult to
Sure.
do, especially now that the state is rethinking what they want to do,
Sure.
but
Yeah,
just kind of put some framework around this.
yeah, it's about $300,000 to $400,000 that we're talking about, that we're going to, definitely need access to. One portion of the project was to replace the repeaters, and we were going to go through and replace each repeater at the 3 towers that we have, and there are multiple repeaters at each tower. And so we do want to keep the funding available for use, because if those repeaters would happen to reach end of life, or something would happen to them before the state has a decision on where they're headed with this project, we definitely need money to replace those, or upgrade those repeaters. So, but that was one of the projects, and we're talking, like you said, between $300,000 and $400,000.
Do we have any idea about the state's timeline on this?
Not right now,
Anyway, I even asked those questions.
Right. Yeah, it could move quickly. It just depends on what comes out of this RFP that they're working on. I think that'll be our guidance. And, I've talked to some people and they think, this is probably 5 years off. And I talk to others and say, no, I think it's going to go much quicker on that. And basically it comes down to state funding. If they go through the process and they come up with this 800 megahertz project that they want to do statewide, if it's going to cost, $100 million, where's the funding going to come from?
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for Melissa about this issue or any of the others? Chairman Bartlett, go ahead.
That money was in this year's budget, wasn't it? For that?
Yes.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Yep. It had been carried forward. So it is in this year's budget, and I will do a carry forward request to put it into 2022. So that we do have it, like I said, in case we do get some guidance, or like I said, one of those repeaters, we have issues with it.
Okay.
Other questions for Melissa regarding either this issue or others? Supervisor Rogers, I see you with your hand up.
So if the state rolls out a new system, are we going to be on the hook for a fair amount of money?
Yeah, I think that we could definitely, we definitely could. We've been partners with them through this WISCOM project. So we're hoping that if they do roll out, an entire statewide system that is going to cost, a lot of money, that there would be some funding available. And because we kind of bought into the system, when it first came out, that we would definitely be considered a partner in this process, and that they would offer us some funding, grant funding, or, definitely some assistance with some of this.
Thank you.
That do it, Mr. Rogers? For those of you who haven't heard my rant lately, while we're scraping to put up repeaters that work and fill the potholes in the highway, the state of Wisconsin is bragging about the surplus of money that they've got, and announced today that income and sales tax revenues were higher than they anticipated. So if you got nothing to do tonight, call one of our assembly people or senators and say, let's loosen the purse strings a little bit and kind of help counties do the job that you told us we have to do. Does today have an R in it, by the way? No. My wife tells me I can only rant with days that have an R, so I apologize for that. Is that it, Melissa?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. Medical examiner. Marcy, I saw your, oh yeah, there you are. Anything you'd like to add to your report, or, well, we'll start with that.
I do not have any additions to my report.
Questions for the medical examiner? All right, you go back to your phone call.
I am done with my phone call. I apologize for that.
That's all right. That's always interesting. I sat in a Zoom meeting with the WCA one time where we listened to almost 20 minutes of a phone call. No, guy was on his phone, so they couldn't reach him. Anyway, so you're way under that threshold, Marcy. So thank you.
I can always count on Kevin to ask me to be quiet. So that worked out well.
Well, I like to see a staff that gets along. Speaking of Kevin, you're up.
All right, thanks. Not much to add, I guess, to my report other than expand on the request to terminate the current hiring eligibility list. I forgot to ask Katie to put that on as an action item for this this month. So I don't know if you can act on it or not.
I thought we did that a couple of months ago.
We probably did, and we've used that list up already. We had 5 people, excuse me, 5 people on that list.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and you don't need to hold civil service interviews unless there are more candidates than you can put on, right?
Right. We only need
Okay.
to hold interviews unless there's over 10, and then it gets narrowed down to 10 from there.
Right.
So there was only 5 on the list. 2 aren't eligible that are left. They're not certified, and they have to be certified upon a time of appointment. And one was kind of washed on a preliminary background, and the other guy, well, the 2 other guys got jobs. One was with us, and one guy went to Mondovi PD. So we'll need to start an eligibility list. We have Bruce Sampson retiring in March that we'll need to replace.
Will this hold until next month?
Yeah, I think we'll be fine if we
Okay.
can't act on it this month.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for the sheriff?
I'd just like to say something about Officer Gates. Appreciate what he did there. Seems awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that
Very
was
nice.
very much, happened to be in the right place at the right time. He happened to be working the south half of the county that day, but had been home for lunch and decided to take a loop up north before he headed back south, and had happened to be a minute or 2 away from that crash when it was called in. So it worked out very well.
Give him our thanks and appreciation. So you said it when it's a good example of the work that your staff does on a daily basis. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Questions or comments for the sheriff? Chairman Bartlett, go ahead.
I see the inmate count is running around 64. Do we have any state inmates in there at this time?
No state inmates. Even though they claim they didn't terminate our contract, we still have a contract with them, but there's no money in the state budget to house inmates out. So apparently they're doing that in their own facilities. So no, we do not have any state inmates right now that they're paying for. We still have a contract, but they're not giving us any inmates. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for the sheriff? I saw Brenda's phone light up a minute ago. Brenda, you have any comments about the jail you'd like to share with us?
No, nothing in addition.
Okay. Any questions for Brenda regarding jail? I see that sheriff reported that you've got a pretty serious COVID issue going on. But
And actually, it's gotten a lot better now.
good.
That's the downside to having this report out to you a week in advance of the meeting, is COVID's pretty much cleared up in the jail by now. So
Good.
but I have to write it for the time and place that the reports due. So
Right. I'm going to assume that there were no hospitalizations involved with that. Is that correct or not?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Any questions or comments for the sheriff or for Brenda regarding department or the jail? All right. Thanks, folks. Courts, Katie, you're up next.
Yeah, I don't actually have anything else additional to add to my written report unless there's any questions.
I do have, see, I could highlight your report. I highlighted the 190,000 back to the county, and that's, appreciate that.
Yeah, we had a good year on revenue collections, most definitely. So happy to do that.
Is that, we haven't talked about it much lately, but we went to that state collection service, what's that, about 2 years ago now?
Yeah, I think it was in
Oh, it was
2018. Yeah, 2018.
That was before
So-
COVID.
Yep, most definitely.
So that's still
we're-
working well for us.
It is. Yep, I'm very happy with them.
Good. Questions for Katie regarding the courts? Our new 3 branches are all up and running and working well, and
Yes, they are.
judges are getting along. They're not, you know, out in the courtyard at lunchtime fighting over who gets the next murder
Nope,
case. Okay.
From my end, I think it's going well. I know all 3 judges are present at the meeting tonight as well. So if they want to add in, feel free to chime in.
Judges, anybody like to add your 2 cents in today? It's your big chance.
I'd just like to say, I think things are going very well in our transition. And as noted in Katie's report, Judge Meyer is going to start doing family treatment court in February. So that's a really good thing. We've been working on that transition. You know, we have some things to work out yet, but things are going very well for where we're at this point in time. So that's my impression.
Super. Good to hear. Questions? Anybody else have anything for the courts, the judges, anything? Don't see anything. And we still don't see Zons or Vandermillen either. I wonder where those guys went to. CJCC, Sarah, am I missing Sarah?
Oh, I'm here. Good. You should see me
Oh,
here.
you're right in front of me.
Good evening. I have nothing additional to add to the report unless there's questions.
I just would like to comment, the last CJCC meeting, we saw what I thought was an extremely useful, well, part of a video on addiction. And it's, some of this stuff has got to get a wider audience, I think. The other thing we talked about at CJCC, and I can ask you and the sheriff, did anybody ever come up with a copy of the video that highlighted the jail programs? One had to do with the dog, one had to do with the garden. Did those ever turn up anywhere?
No, unfortunately, they didn't record those. I had Sheriff Nate Dreckman that put that together, check with them, and they don't have a recording of it because it was never recorded.
I checked with CJ or WCA too, and they don't have it either. It's too bad, because that again is one of those things that warrants a wider audience, I think. Questions for Sarah? Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Well, this isn't really a question for Sarah, but she was kind of involved along with the sheriff putting that video out there to the public about where kids can hide drugs. I thought that was pretty interesting for myself, so, and I'm sure other people did too.
Yeah, thank you for sending that out. I appreciate it too.
Yeah, that's kind of we've done one of those hide rooms or rooms before here, but you get a pretty limited audience when you can do a virtual one. That's pretty eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. You get any blowback from kids about you don't trust me, invasion of my privacy, that kind of thing?
We don't usually necessarily, because once we're involved, they're already in deep water. It's probably the parents that probably get the blowback from them.
Yeah, by the time you get there, it's a different story. All right, anybody else? Anything for CJCC? Don't see anything. District Attorney, Andrea, how about you? Anything to add to your report? We've got a request for a budget adjustment, and you probably want to say a little bit of something about that.
Or do you want me to do that now?
If you'd like. Otherwise, is there anything else that you'd want to add to your report? Or
Nothing to my report, just information regarding my request.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Andrea regarding the report? We will get to the request for the budget adjustment when we're done with reports, but number of other things in her report. No questions? All right. Thank you, Andrea. And child support. Josie, I saw your button lit up here a minute ago. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. I love it. COVID, you can say that. If we were meeting live, I'd look kind of stupid saying this. You're muted though.
You would think after nearly 2 years of this that you could find that mute button, but good evening, everyone. I do have something to add to my written report. I had indicated that I had done interviews for my 2 open positions and verbal offers had been accepted. One last week has since recanted. So I do have a program assistant who is starting this Friday, and I'll share information about her with my next report. And I had HR reopen the legal secretary recruitment on a continuous basis. So that will allow us to just interview qualified candidates as their applications come through. And we'll keep it open until we get the right person. But we do have one interview scheduled for this week, Thursday. So
good luck.
Thank you.
Questions for Josie? Appreciate the quarterly performance reports too. It's nice to get some sense of how your department does compared with, this is a national, Wisconsin.
This is state.
Oh, no, federal fiscal year.
Well, it's for the federal fiscal year.
Oh, but it is Wisconsin. Yeah.
It's so the graph shows Dunn County specifically, and then I just include the state averages kind of as a note on the bottom. So
good.
The first thing I do when I get those, little dashboards that say the numbers have been updated is I look to see if we're still meeting Eau Claire County, and we are. So it's really all I care about.
Well, that's all any of us care about.
So.
Well, it's good to have a little local competition.
That's right.
Anybody questions for Josie or comments about her report? Anything on child support? This is the first meeting we've had in a couple of months, boy. Makes me think that you guys could kind of run your own departments without my help, but I hate to think that, so.
Well, and I don't know if supervisors noticed, I do plan on increasing my ask for travel. Should I be asked to sit on the Wisconsin Child Support Enforcement Association board? I was just on a meeting with some colleagues this morning, and when the next election comes, we are losing our president, treasurer, corresponding secretary, one board member. All of them are not running for re-election. So Gen Xers like myself need to step up and fill in those holes.
Josie, can I ask, what is the advantage to the county of having you serve on a board like that, or frankly, any of our staff people serve on state boards, whether they're regulatory, whether they're administrative, whether they're governance? Yeah. Can you speak to that a bit?
Well, I personally believe, especially being from a small county, that it's important to have a seat at the table so that the, Milwaukee County and Dane County aren't just monopolizing the conversation, because what's good for large counties doesn't always work in small counties. And then the advantage is we find out, I guess, things that are going to be happening much sooner than, when the final version of whatever soundbite gets distributed, statewide. We can know about things and can plan for them and prepare for them much sooner than just having it dumped in your lap. So we find out about, funding changes or policy changes, law changes, that sort of thing.
Well, I like that idea of a seat at the table. I heard an expression recently that how did it go? Something about if you're not part of this, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're part of the menu or something like that?
Well, and just, I guess for supervisors' information, the board would meet 5 times a year. 2 of those meetings are already in conjunction with meetings I would attend anyway. So it would be 3 additional periods of travel throughout the year for either a 1 or a 2-night stay in a hotel, basically. I personally don't seek reimbursement for my food because I would eat anyway. And then a lot of times we carpool with neighboring, directors, so it saves on the transportation costs.
Good. Always appreciate keeping costs down. Other comments or questions for Josie regarding child support? All right, don't see any. Thank you, Josie, and thanks to all of you for not only the thorough reports that we get, but the obvious pride you take in your departments and doing your jobs. We really appreciate that. Brings us to item number 6. I don't have anything to bring before the meeting. Item number 7, we don't have any actions to take. Item number 8, consideration reports and resolutions to the county board. Actually, if you look at the resolution, what we're going to do with this is we're going to recommend it to the executive committee because the executive committee is the finance committee, and the executive committee would then recommend it to the county board. But having said that, the process is still the same. If you look at the resolution for the budget adjustment, it's fairly simple and straightforward. It's in your packet, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrea at this point. And Andrea, if you've got some things you'd like to share, this is a good time. Yeah, why don't we hear from you first, and then I'll entertain a motion. How about that?
Sure.
Then we can talk about it.
Sure. So in December, I had a unexpected vacancy or resignation from my office manager. She was a huge asset to the office, but had some family issues come up where she was unable to have childcare for her children anymore, and so needed to resign. And it was due to some medical issues that were she was unaware of until in December. So she gave a 2-week notice. Her last day was the end of December. And she, along with 3 other employees in my office, elect not to take the county's health insurance. And so that is sort of the reason for my request to the committee this time. So I posted the position, posted it for 3 weeks, received 6 applicants that met the criteria. So I was quite disappointed in that, to be honest. And only 1 that really has a lot of experience in the criminal justice field. 1 that's had an internship with a civil law office for 2 months, to me is just nowhere near what I need for an office manager. And so I want to hire and move forward with this candidate. The problem is this was not an expected resignation, and being aware of the county's financial situation, I ask employees if what their health insurance requests are, and if they just don't want the county's insurance, I don't ask for it, because to me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to budget for family health insurance for every employee in my office in the event someone resigns. So anyway, that's sort of the issue that I've come up with, is I want to offer the position and move forward with this candidate. And I don't have the funds for health insurance to cover that cost. The employee also is a current Dunn County employee who is higher on the pay scale than the previous office manager. But that I believe I can cover due to the position being vacant. My revenues over the last couple of years have been, in 2021 were $6,800 over what I anticipated, and in 2020, $8,300 over what I anticipated. So certainly that would cover the cost of the increased salary as well as just having the position vacant for some time. So I did meet with, or through email with the administration. And so I was actually in a jury trial the 7th through the 14th. Our agenda and resolutions were due the 14th. And so I wasn't able to, I guess the finance department drafts the resolutions for you. I just wanted to make sure this got on the agenda because this is having a real big issue on my office, having a vacant position. Sort of all of the managerial duties are coming on to me. And when I was in a week trial as well as in court, it's very difficult for me to be working on payroll as well as managing the office. So I asked that it get put on the agenda. And I think the administration wanted to bring the 3 different options. The first is a budget adjustment. The second is a contingency fund request. And the third is to repost the job opening. And I believe that that is what the administration would like me to do. My concerns with that is essentially I don't think I'm going to find someone as qualified or that has the experience and the right fit for the office as this applicant does. But even if I do, it's really likely that person's going to want health insurance. And that's really the sticking point is the health insurance cost, which is $24,000 for family health insurance. So I certainly understand that the fiscal concern of the administration. I just don't think that the economics in reality are meeting with my requests. So that is why the budget adjustment is on the, I asked that it be put on the agenda.
Thank you, Andrea. Be appropriate to have a motion regarding this resolution at this time, and then we can discuss, ask questions, etc.
I'll move.
Supervisor Bauer moves, Supervisor Rogers seconds. Is that correct? Thank you, gentlemen. Questions, discussion? I noticed that we have Sarah Stabenow and Beata from Finance. County Manager Miller is here. I have a couple of questions. I guess knowing what I know about this, which is not complete by any means, I would have thought that a contingency request might almost have been more appropriate. Can any of you tell me why a budget adjustment might be the appropriate vehicle for this? And if it is, that budget adjustment adjusts for expenditures, but it doesn't adjust for income, how would that play out? Mr. Miller.
As you noted, our CFO, Beata Haug, is here, as is our Chief Accounting Manager, Sarah Stabenow. I had some conversation with our outgoing CFO, Keith Stray, who expressed his opinion that the appropriate thing to do is to re-advertise for this position. I can only try to capture what he said to me, so I'm a mouthpiece here, and perhaps Beata can correct me, or Sarah if I misstate. He indicated that a budget adjustment would not be the preferred best management practice on this for a reason that you alluded to, Chairman Tripp. We don't know the revenue source. If we increase the budget for the DA's office, it's got to come from somewhere, from another department's budget or from the general fund. And Mr. Stray discouraged that as a practice because of the precedent that it sets. We also discussed the contingency fund. As you are aware, we've for a while had a policy that the contingency fund is for emergency uses or for opportunities that are time sensitive, good options for the county that will be lost if we don't move judiciously. And the assessment in discussing this with the CFO was that while the need is certainly there, the emergency is created by seeking to fill this position with somebody who's demanding too high a salary and would need health insurance that's not budgeted. And on that assessment did not meet the criteria as an emergency so much as a desire or a want. So again, I'm trying to capture what I was told by the CFO. I don't know if Beata, you have anything to add, or Sarah, if you have anything to add for the committee's consideration as they deliberate on this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Miller. I will confirm that. So yeah, we did have a discussion regarding on how we can fund this position and as some of the options Mr. Miller discussed, and we'll be more than happy to meet outside of this meeting with management to see what our options are. One might be that, either recruit, and if that's not an option at all, is to perhaps maybe delay the filling the position so that it could also have that savings in this budget, meaning delaying it in I don't know, a few months or however that might be to kind of make up that gap that we need. So that's one of the options for us to explore.
Supervisor Bauer.
With Andrea saying what she did about her job, I mean, she can't handle it now within just a little time. So if you postpone it a few months, ain't that going to put a lot of pressure on her?
Supervisor Rogers, were you getting ready to? No. Andrea, you mentioned that the income from your fees collected has been higher over the past couple of years than you anticipated. Do you think that the revenue from fees in this 2022 budget is realistic? And what I'm getting at is that if realistically you could increase that revenue, you can decrease the difference in what that position will be costing. Now, you did say, I think, and this is where I'm asking for you to clarify it for me and the committee, an increase in fees would probably cover any increase in salary that might occur, and the roughly $25,000 for health insurance is over and above that. Am I correct in that?
Yes, Supervisor Tripp, you are. So the revenue fees are for discovery, so which is the cost of copying discs and reports related to criminal cases. So I don't have control over how much revenue. It's just how many cases my office tends to file, which is based on how much law enforcement refers up. But yeah, we've been at least 6,000 to 8,000 over since I've been here. I haven't adjusted that just because there were discussions on moving to a digital format, and as long as we keep doing paper does make more money that way. So I anticipate my discovery costs and revenue will certainly cover the increase in salary. It's just the cost of the health insurance really, which is affecting my budget. I did put a retirement expense in my budget as well for $19,000, which could become available. I anticipate that an employee in my office will be retiring, but I don't know for certain. So that's why that's put in. So there's always that possibility that I would have that amount. But to answer Supervisor Bauer's, I guess, sort of issue as well, to keep the position open and vacant, just in my opinion, isn't real doable or workable. I'm not just a SAP, I'm elected to prosecute cases and actually be in the courtroom and to handle like our homicides that are coming up in July and August. And I can't devote the time and attention that I need to those cases if I'm, doing the bills and supervising the staff back in the office.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Chairman Bartlett.
Supervisor Rogers is on the committee. You can go first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
So I guess, what's the possibility of using that retirement allotment that, since the county don't typically budget for future retirements anyway, that would go into the future adjustments at the end of the year. And I guess I am concerned about overloading the DA's plate with something that's not really in her scope of work.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I'm seeing two issues here. One is that we didn't budget for benefits of health insurance, and I totally understand that. The other one is paying somebody more than what that position is recommended to be paid by our class study. And we have procedures to look at that and to raise that if a certain position was not set up to be paid enough. And if we kind of go around that procedure with a department coming up with money, no matter where it comes from, then the other departments are going to want to do this too, the way I see it. We have this, I know in highway that there's 2 or 3 positions they're looking at that they feel are wrong. And I think I've heard that from a couple other departments also. So I think we have to be careful on what we do here. I think there's two issues, and I think we need to separate them and realize what we're doing.
Other discussion? Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, just to address Supervisor or Chairman Bartlett's concern there about the pay. I did talk to the applicant about the current pay being higher than the highest level in the office manager position. And the applicant understood, and if it meant not getting the position, would still take the lower class pay. Just certainly given the years of experience though with the county would be on the highest step. So it would still be higher than my salary, but that applicant understands that it would be a pay cut if they were to take the office manager position. And they understood that. So I'm not asking the committee to circumvent the classification. But this employee has worked for the county for over 20 years, I think, so would be higher on the step scale. But I still believe I would have the revenue to cover that additional cost.
And if I may, there is a procedure that you go to Mr. Miller first and then to HR. I don't remember the exact procedure, but there's a procedure to do if you want to do that, to hire someone that's in a higher class than what we would normally hire them. So I'm glad to hear. I was under the understanding that you were going out of the class, so I'm glad to hear that. I don't see a problem with that then. So I'm okay with what you're proposing, as long as they stay in the class.
Thank you for the question and the response. Supervisor Bauer, go ahead.
Is there any other staff that can stand in for maybe a month? I mean, do you have other employees that could just get by until you get this settled?
Yeah, I have had one of the legal secretaries doing the office manager roles. It's just the last pay period. She worked 19 hours of overtime. And my budget only has $584 for the whole year of overtime. So we are extremely busy due to COVID rescheduled trials that just kind of got back to back to back, and it's a very busy time on top of being short staffed. So I have staff who I think pretty much every single legal secretary has worked overtime the last pay period. But that's another concern. If I keep doing that, I'm going to run out of money on the overtime budget.
You could conceivably, if that's the case and it goes for a while, that overtime budget excess could be covered by the savings from not having an office manager, right? I mean, I'm not suggesting that, but what I'm saying is that would kind of level it out.
Potentially.
Go ahead.
No, potentially. I just, my concern is, I think that's working my staff too hard. And then when I have staff who are working, 50, 60 hours a week, mistakes happen, and mistakes can cause the county a lot of money too in a jury trial if something gets messed up. So.
And I appreciate that as well. And as a matter of fact, anybody looking at the job market now knows that, these are difficult times for employers and employees. Other comments, questions? I guess I'm still a little bit, and I appreciate Mr. Miller's explanation, but it didn't resonate with me very successfully. This seems to me like a relatively clear case for a contingency request. Here is a retirement that was unexpected. It constitutes, I think you could, depends on how you define emergency, but this is a significant situation that a contingency request could address. If somebody can enlighten me further, I'd appreciate it. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
What I conveyed was just the discussion that administration had on that. Ms. Noldoff can apply for a contingency fund request. We have a standard operating procedure for doing that. And the Committee on Administration would be charged with listening to the request and making that determination.
Right. Other discussion or questions? To the members of the committee, are we ready to take a vote on the motion?
I guess
I don't want to do it. Supervisor Rogers, go ahead.
So is there still a decision to be made whether or not we have this as a budget adjustment or the other adjustment? Or
right now, the resolution and the motion is for a budget adjustment. So that's what we're going to vote on. Let me tell you where I come from. I think this position of office manager needs to be filled with a qualified individual as quickly as we can practically do that. I understand the constraints in terms of financing and the overall budget. I wonder, for example, and I'll go back to my first question, if we were to pass, if the executive committee were to pass this resolution, where would the money come from? And I think Mr. Miller answered that. It's going to come out of the general fund. That may not be the best way to do things, but I think it's workable. I think it's necessary. I think that as a committee that's charged with overseeing these departments, it is an opportunity for us, if we want to do it, to advocate for this motion. Doesn't guarantee that the executive committee will pass it, but I think it's something that I at least am comfortable going forward with, and then let the chips fall where they may. Supervisor Bauer.
Looking at the resolution, wasn't it already offered by the executive committee?
No, the executive committee has got to offer the resolution to the board because they're the finance committee. By the way, the date would have to be changed on there because it's got today's date, and it would have to be, if I'm correct about this, would have to reflect the date when the executive committee approves it. If I'm correct, what we are really doing is recommending this passage to the executive committee. They would then forward the resolution. Does that clarify things, Bob, or just confuse it more? All right. Anybody else? All right, we have a motion to recommend to the executive committee the passage of the resolution on the budget adjustment for the DA's office. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And since there's just the three of us, it passes. Executive committee will get this, and I'm sure they will have some discussion as well. But thanks to the committee, this was, as always, a serious, thoughtful conversation about difficult issues. I appreciate the work that Andrea did preparing this. I appreciate the work that the finance division and the administration and the staff did in their background work, and I appreciate the serious approach that the committee has given this. So thanks to all of you. That's it. Announcements? Anybody have any announcements? We've got a retirement Zoom get-together scheduled for, I think, the 31st. Is that correct? For Mr. Stry. I would encourage you to drop into that and express some thanks to him for guiding us through the financial waterfalls for the last 4 or 5 years. Appreciate that. Any other announcements? Our next meeting is February 28th at 4:30 p.m. And unless there's anything else for the good of the order, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, folks. Thanks, Matt, for your tech help and support. Thank you, Katie, for